for. You alright?
Yeah.
Hello fellow RVers, this is Gary once again with the Ruff Road RV Life. This is part 2 of our servicing Ruff Road. In the previous one we did the generator. And this one we're doing the motor. Now we use our rear jacks to lift the back end up a little bit so that we can slide underneath it. And in order to do that, in this motorhome, we have to bring our slide in. So it is a little bit of prep that we have to do before we start. So we bring our slide in and we raise our back jacks up a little bit, not a lot, just enough that we can get underneath there easy. Our tires are still on the ground. We don't raise it up so much that I got the tires and everything off the ground, just enough to get the chassis up a little bit we can get underneath. So during the process of this raising and lowering of the jacks for the front and the back, for the generator and the motorhome, we took that time to install our new RV snap pads, which if you buy from the website, you can get a discount using our code. Shameless plug. She'll probably link the code there somewhere.
And disclosure, we earn a small commission for that. You can use the code and check it out.
Once we have everything raised, we put a couple blankets down on the grass because we're doing it in grass and dirt. We will slide underneath there, and we have a 16-quart catch pan for the oil. We will use 16 quarts of oil to fill. That's how much the capacity on our motor is. It's a Cummins 300 horsepower ISB. When we were going to change the oil filter and the fuel filter. The air filter we did last year, and it doesn't need to be changed quite as often. There's actually a gauge in the back that shows the air filter when it needs to get changed. So this year is just oil filter, and fuel filter.
16 quarts of oil, some transmission fluid to prime the fuel filter, and oil filter and fuel filter. Bam.
Oil filter, which is up a little bit, but it's accessible. And we're going to unscrew the oil filter, and hopefully it doesn't come crashing down into the oil pan and splash oil all over us.
Pro tip, wear old clothes. Go ahead.
Yes. And we're going to take our ratchet and we're going to undo the oil drain plug and let all that oil drain out into the catch pan. Preferably into the catch pan and not all over us.
All right.
We are going to pre-fill our oil filter with oil.
Pour it in, fill it up, then I'll let it wick. It'll wick and wick and wick and wick.
We're using Shell Rotella T4. It's not synthetic, it's just standard oil. And we pre-fill it. Some motorhomes with different model motors, they have an autofill that they can do that autofills their oil filter. We don't have that in our motorhome. So we will preload our oil filter.
How do you know when it's full? When you're done oh, you can see it. Does it need more?
Yeah, it's still wicking a little bit.
Pretty full.
So this is 4 quarts. So it's down to, what's that, 2.5 quarts?
Looks like it.
That's how much that holds.
Wow.
Because all that wicking material in there soaks it all up.
Okay, cool.
So it's almost like a quart and a half to fill the filter.
I'm still waiting on the oil to drain all the way.
And then we are going to preload our fuel filter. Now we preload it with transmission fluid. You can preload it with diesel fuel, doesn't matter. We use transmission fluid because when you go to start your motor, it draws all that transmission fluid up in there and cleans and lubricates all those moving parts that are in your motor. Doesn't hurt your motor, but you can do diesel fuel preloaded with that if you choose to. We choose to use transmission fluid. We've done it for years, works fine for us.
Is that a truck driver trick?
Yeah, I've learned that over the years from different diesel mechanics. I think you can read about it online and see it's not a bad practice to do. But that's a decision you can make on your own.
But a disclaimer.
Yeah.
We're just sharing what we do.
What we do.
You do what is right for your rig.
Yes, or maybe if it's a warranty thing, maybe you have to use the diesel fuel to preload it with, whatever you feel comfortable with. We happen to use transmission fluid. Then we're going to, right next to the oil pan, you'll see another filter hanging down. That is the fuel filter. And we're going to remove the fuel filter, drop it into the catch pan.
And that is
this is the fuel
filter.
You get that little...
And the gasket's on the top.
Yep.
So we will preload it with transmission fluid. Reattach it up there. Snug it up real good. Don't forget to put the new little gasket on it, the little round ring. That's important because it comes with the filter. Go ahead and change it at that time. And we'll snug it up.
There we go. We're golden.
All right.
Now we've got our oil filter up there preloaded. We've got our fuel filter on, it's preloaded. And we're going to put our oil plug back in the oil pan. Very important step. Don't forget the oil plug. And we're going to put that back in, snug it up there good too. And then we're going to go to the back of our motorhome to put in 16 quarts of oil. Now we have to open up our hood back there. We have to stand on a step ladder, and then we have to run a hose, piece of garden hose attached to a funnel, and snake it all the way through, because the fill thing on our motorhome it doesn't sit up like that. It sits almost vertical. So you have to fish it in until it curves around to go down. That's just how it was designed. That's what we got to work with. And at that point, we will start dumping 4 gallons of oil in it. Now you can use a hand pump. You've got an electric pump that you can use to pump it in that way. That all works too. We just stand up there and dump it in 1 gallon at a time. I have tried using a hand pump. The oil is very thick and it takes a long time to do that, to get that oil in there. It's quicker just to dump it in a nice funnel.
Yeah, have a good funnel with a long, flexible part, and
yes,
have patience.
You have a little patience, just slow and steady. You get it in there. Now it's time to start the beast. So you go up front, start the motor. Might take a few turns to the motor to get it to get all that up in there and going, but then boom, it'll start right up. Suck that preloaded transmission fluid through there. Doesn't smoke or anything. It just whoosh, and it's gone through, and then you're sitting back there idling away. Let her idle till she gets warm. Check for leaks. If you ain't got no leaks, you're good to go.
Nope. Okay, it's running. 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 Still running. Oil pressure's good.
I'd let it run 5 or 10 minutes, just make sure you got all the air out of it. But it sounds fine.
You can reverse your process then. And as far as we go, at that point, we have to bring our jacks up, re-level our motorhome with our new snap pads, and let her slide out, and life is good. And that's pretty much what we do as far as changing on our motorhome. One thing I would mention is while we were under our motorhome, both the front and the rear, we have an electric grease gun. So while we're under there, we greased all the fittings underneath our motorhome chassis that require greasing. There's quite a few of them under there, but we did do that while we were under there. You can use a hand pump but we just happen to have an electric grease gun that works really well. It's battery powered. That's something you don't have to do if you're not comfortable with.
But isn't that something that it's not a really expensive thing to have done at the shop?
I don't think just having your chassis lubed is a big expense. Now also, while we were underneath there, we undid the fill plug on our rear end differential and to check the fluid level on that, and we discovered it was low. Put our finger in there, we couldn't touch it. So while we were in the middle of doing the oil change and everything, we decided to go ahead and just pull the plug, drain the differential, and put new gear oil in. Now we used Royal Purple gear oil, which is like $23 a quart. I believe we put in like 10 quarts into our differential to fill it. But now I feel more comfortable. We got fresh gear oil in there, and it's full. I don't want to have any issues there. So that's something you might not normally check during a standard oil change, but it is right back there and it's easy to check. So you might want to think about checking that while you're underneath there doing all the other work. Now we'll give you some numbers here as far as cost. I spent 16 quarts of Sharon T4 truck motor oil, $63.84 for 16 quarts. A fuel filter, which is a Fleet Guard, $27.27. Oil filter, Fleet Guard, $14.47, which came up to $105.98 for the oil filter, and fuel filter. Now the rear end differential, like I said, that's like $240 worth of gear oil. It's a lot more expensive doing that, so but you don't have to do that often. I did look up in a box in one of the big stores chains, and on their price sheet that they have on the internet, I think it was $350 for an oil service on a motorhome diesel, and that's oil. I think filters were extra. So total was $105.98. That doesn't count the rear end fluid. That's just the oil filter, and the fuel filter. It was $106 basically to do a service on the motorhome. And it doesn't take that long. If you're not filming it like we did, which took 3 hours, you could probably do it in an hour.
And it's always helpful to have someone, an extra hand, especially when your hand is incapacitated. So we had an extra hand under there, our son-in-law.
After all is said and done, we now have our motorhome is serviced. We have all our snap pads on. Our generator's been serviced. Our chassis's been totally greased. Got brand new rear end fluid in my differential back there. We are good to travel, to hit the road time, which is what we're planning to do here shortly. So drop in the comments if you do your own servicing on your RV. Let us know what you do, maybe what parts you use. You got any tips or tricks you care to share? People that might watch this video. Anyway, with all that being said, take care.